So my name is Ryan Evans. I am the co-founder of Tend. Tend is an analytics software as a service product that makes it easy for business owners and marketing folks to understand exactly which marketing tactics are driving paying customers.
Welcome to Innovator Tribe Outside the Bubble,
a show about bridging the gap between the inspiration of an idea to the creation of a product.
Ahmad, what's going on, man?
What's good, Toye? How you feeling?
I can't complain, man. Just staying busy and trying to kind of keep things moving.
Yeah, it's but busy is good, you know. Like we gotta stay busy because we set some high goals this year, and we gotta be about the action. So you know, I'm happy to hear that you're busy because I'm busy too, and that's the only way that I can make sense of all the craziness around.
I mean, you're absolutely right. I feel like if I'm not busy, you know, I feel like I need to be doing something. Right. So I feel like being busy actually helps me somehow stay centered.
There's some logic behind that. But I'm super excited about our episode today with Ryan Evans. He's the founder of Tend.io. And then also he has another startup called BitesizePR.com. It's a really, really dope episode with a lot of tangible insights that you need to grab your pen and your paper if you listen to it. If you don't have it handy right now, press pause, grab what you need to grab because you're going to get a lot of gems and need to take a lot of notes and some key takeaways. I like, for example, for me, just straight off the top, this episode is about a lot of gems about customer acquisition and just the simple formula to go about acquiring your first customers and how to grow that organically from a founder who is non-technical and not pouring tons of hundreds and hundreds, thousands of dollars into having your customer acquisition growth.
Yeah, also, I really liked where Ryan really kind of went into how he even got into technology. He shared with us how he kind of came into it from a consultant standpoint and eventually was able to grow an agency out of that. And from that agency and the market solution that he was looking for that he could not find, he eventually decided to create a startup based off of a solution that he had created for his own company. And essentially, which is what led him into his first tech startup. Throughout the process, Ryan made it very clear that, you know, a lot of it was based off of him, you know, not really knowing what he needed to do, but actually going out and searching for that information and then, you know, learning new skills and from developing those skills, being able to scale his entrepreneurship endeavors.
See, Toya, you can always bring it back to the fundamentals of the show, and I appreciate that because that's so important. No, seriously, I do. Because like we talk a lot about lean methodologies when you're developing your product, and so one of the I guess the soft touches to it is that when you're just starting out, you're expecting to follow that process, and then the response rate, you think you're going to have warm welcome from your friends and family and provide an action to it. And so Ryan breaks down some tips on this, like how to handle the I don't want to call it like rejection, but the unresponsiveness that you may have from your friends and family when you're presenting to them or trying to validate your value proposition to that customer group, because they may not actually be your customers. And so you just need to know how to handle that as you're developing your skill set as an entrepreneur.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of good stuff in this episode, guys. Like Ahmad said, grab your pen and your pad or your notepad on Word or Evernote and get to write because there's some really good takeaways on here.
Oh yeah, wait, so yeah, you're not about to forget that one part though.
but before we actually get into it, make sure you hit that subscribe button.
Yes, sir. Just press subscribe. That's where you can be a part of the community. We want to connect with all our Innovator Tribe outside the bubble listeners and keep you updated with our latest shows and content that we publish. So press pause. This is going to be a dope show, so you're going to love it. So just go ahead and subscribe now, and then tune in and grab your pen and paper and take down some notes on all the gems that are going to come from Ryan Evans at Tend.io.
Let's get into it.
Yes, sir.
Cool breeze.
Ryan, it's great to have you on the show. I'm excited because, you came highly recommended by one of our previous guests, Chris Campbell, the founder of Review Trackers. He said we should reach out to you, and, I'm excited that we did because the startups that you're working on and that you founded, are not only in line with kind of where we are right now as far as working on Innovator Tribe and getting it out to the world, but just it's a very interesting niche, marketing of startups on one side, and then also marketing analytics with 10. So we're definitely going to get into that.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm super excited.
Great. But before we do, we usually like to, ask a question that we really bring at the top of each interview. So I'll let Ahmad go ahead and ask that question of ours.
Oh yeah, it's one of our questions that we like to just make it like an icebreaker, but we like to ask everybody on the show, whenever you have that important meeting or a pitch to deliver, what is that one song? And for Toy and I, it's generally a hip hop song, but it could be anything for you. But what's that one song that gets you in the zone?
Yes. So this may date me a little bit, but I'm a big fan of Biggie, and one of my favorite songs is Juicy. And so just like, where he's like, I let my tape rock till my tape pop. Like that's that's kind of like that gets me in the zone for sure.
Oh man.
Yeah, rocking until the wheels fall off. I like it. It.
That's right.
Cool. Yeah, you can never go wrong with Biggie. I mean,
no, you can't.
I feel like I'm gonna go to say this because whatever, it's 18 plus viewers or listeners, I should say. But the 10 Crack Commandments is, I think, not only is it a great song, but if you really listen to the tactics that he's actually describing, those are really great tactics for just applying to business in general. I don't care what nobody says.
You know what's really funny that you say that? So last night, in fact, not to take this to a political level, but they were talking about nepotism in the White House, and someone was like, tweeting about that, and I was like, I'm like, that's actually crack commandment number 7, and and I was like, I started to tweet it, and I'm like, you know what? These people are going to have no idea what I'm talking about. So I did not, in fact, tweet it, but I thought about it.
Yeah, I like you already because you actually know crack commandment number 7, and I can honestly say I do not know, but I'm hoping that you can tell me because I'm curious now.
you can Google it. It's I don't remember the exact verse, but it's like something about family and business don't mix, and I won't. I won't quote it too much.
Yeah, I think that line is very explicit, so we'll leave it at that. Yeah. Oh man, that's funny.
Yeah.
So man, that's a great one. That's a great one. I think I might add that I actually might add 10 Crack Commandments and Juicy to kind of my hype playlist.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Keep your family and business completely separated. Money and blood don't mix. Like,
yes, exactly. There you go. Money and blood don't mix. That's it.
Cool. Well,
that's funny.
I could laugh about that all day, but we are here to really dive into your story, and one thing that I connected with you just from the information that I learned about you before we got met today was that you kind of come from the technology route, like the untraditional route, similar to myself. You spoke specifically to how you learned just by scoring through a lot of books and a lot of self-taught type of insights, and I'm interested. What was that? What was that catalyst moment for you to get momentum in starting your technology journey? Yeah,
so when I started out, I was in the finance industry. I had a good job. I had some different jobs in doing commercial real estate finance and then doing some investment banking. And I enjoyed the job for a bit, paid well. It was interesting. It kind of fulfilled an ego thing. But it got boring after a while. So I just, after looking at so many financial models and just, kind of doing the same old thing, I got bored. I always wanted to go off on my own. And I started doing consulting, and I thought that it would actually be financial related. So that's kind of what I started out doing. And I think this is common for most people is you just get out, you're a quote unquote consultant, and which means that you will do almost anything for money. And that's kind of what I did. So I would go and I would say, hey, I have this skill set. I can do financial models, or I can, maybe help you raise money, and kind of just, doing that sort of thing. And I had people who I knew from my past who basically paid me to do some of these things. But I actually got my start in all of this through someone that I used to work with, who had these homes that he wanted to rent out. And they were luxury homes and destination places throughout the world, and he wanted them rented out. And so it was we kind of talked about it, and he said, hey, if you could help me rent these out, I'll pay you to do this. And as a quote unquote consultant, I said, sure, if there's money involved and you're going to pay me to do it, I'll do it. So I actually figured out how to, at the time I had contracted out these sites. So I had partnered up with somebody to build these sites. And then I learned the marketing aspect of it to drive traffic to these sites to rent these homes out. And it actually worked really well. And the houses got rented, and, I started kind of doing that. And then simultaneously, as I sort of got that marketing skill set, I actually wanted to start a product. And at the time, online coupons was kind of a trend. And so I started this site that sold local coupons. And so the problem was I didn't know how to code. I didn't have money to build a website. I didn't know how to design. But I thought, hey, I can do this thing. So I bought this software package for $500 or something to get me started. And I actually started that with my website, and it was terrible. It didn't work well. The design was awful. And so I said, man, I'd really love to hire someone to do this, but I don't have the money, and I sort of don't know what I'm doing or what I need, even need to ask these folks for. So I just started devouring books. Devouring stuff that was online at the time, which there wasn't a ton of things, but there were some things out there that I could learn and grasp onto. So I devoured all that, and I just learned how to put pixels on a page. I learned how to make things work and move and but it was driving toward creating this site, which was a local coupon site, so that I could sell it and do that. So that's kind of how I got started in the tech space, is just out of necessity. I didn't really have a ton of money to pay someone to build it for me. And so in doing it myself, I just had to learn how to do it. And, when you have that sort of desire to make something and you really want to get it out the door and you don't have another way to do it, it's very motivating. So I studied a ton of hours, put a lot of work into it to just do very basic things. And that's kind of how I got started in it.
That's interesting. So you kind of mentioned you have a financial background, mm-hmm. and as you kind of decide to go and take that entrepreneurial leap, you're kind of I guess getting your bearings, really trying to figure out exactly what it is that it was going to be, as far as kind of taking the entrepreneurial path. Consulting kind of was I guess that entry point, mm-hmm. And then you kind of talked about going into marketing for a particular consultant. So I'm guessing it was based off of that marketing experience that you decided to focus on marketing technology, because, Bite-Size PR, which is mm-hmm. the startup that you're working on, prior to founding Tend, mm-hmm. Is marketing focused. Tend is also marketing focused. So can you kind of speak to, the journey to Bite-Size PR? Yeah.
So, you're right in that, and I have to say, and I think this is true for most people, that marketing's always been interesting to me. So I've always, at other jobs, I was really nowhere close to marketing, but it always was kind of interesting to me. So anytime we'd have a meeting about marketing or talk about it, I was kind of drawn to it. So I had that inherent interest. Beyond that, a lot of it did come from necessity. And renting out these houses early on, I just had to figure out how to do it. And so when I did it, I thought it was kind of interesting, kind of cool, but it was more out of necessity. And then, from that skill set, so from learning how to do that, then I knew that I could get traffic to a website far cheaper or in a far more efficient way than people knew how to do at the time. And so then I looked at that as an advantage. So knowing that I had that advantage, then I thought, oh, okay, well, what can I do with this advantage? And, so the sort of foray to that was I could sign up local businesses and get traffic to their business in a way that they didn't know how to do more efficiently. So, once you have the foundational, knowledge, it kind of gives you an advantage, and it sort of, forms your business ideas that way. So once I, kind of did that, the consulting marketing piece kept growing. So it was one of those things that I didn't even intentionally try to grow it. I didn't say, I'm going to go out and start an agency. But what happened is because I knew how to deliver people to these homes, other folks in the same industry came to me through this initial guy that I was doing the work for. So he would refer someone and say, hey, you got to talk to Ryan. He knows how to rent these houses out. I think it'd be a good fit. And so he just kept doing that. And then they would, I would do some work for them, and then they would refer me. And this is very common thing of how a consulting or an agency gets built. And, they just kept referring me. And then all of a sudden I had this business that was real, that I didn't even really intend to get into, that was this marketing agency. And that eclipsed the whole coupon adventure, although it was a good, interesting learning experience. It eclipsed it very quickly, and it became a real business. And so I started hiring people and bringing folks on, and that gave me the agency. Now, the thing that happened in that business is that as it became more successful, it got to a point where we were doing major websites. So I remember we were working on a website for Hyatt, which is again kind of in that niche. It was a high-end property, and we were doing this, and I thought, man, this is great. Like the sites are getting bigger, we're getting more people involved, and the problem was I really didn't like the business. So I had built this agency, and I had people calling me on a Sunday saying, hey, we need this turned around, we need to do this, and there's a million different things. And I just decided, I thought, man, this isn't something that I wanted to do long term. So, when I kind of thought about that, I was open to other, ideas. I thought, I might want to do something that's more product oriented. And so I kind of kept my eyes open for those opportunities. And that's how Bite Size PR started. So Bite Size PR came because I was trying to get press for the agency. So I kind of figured out a couple ways that I could, get press in a very efficient way. I started Bite Size PR to just kind of leverage that skill. It was a very simple product, and essentially what we're doing is finding, media opportunities. So journalists who would say, I'm doing a story on tax tips for the upcoming year. I need somebody who can give me tax tips. And so the service was essentially connecting those two sources together and facilitating that, making it super easy for the business owner to respond. And that's kind of how the business evolved. But it started just because I knew how to get press for our company. And then we kind of turned it into more like a very productized version of that, where we had a landing page and we drove traffic to it, and we got people to sign up, and did that whole thing. And then that's how Bite Size PR kind of emerged. So that's how that, and Bite Size PR is still going. It's up and running. It's a good business. That's how I got to there.
Ryan, you're very resourceful. Like in essence, I'm just being honest. You find you just took an inventory. It seems like of where you were at, and the marketing aspect was really, you said it was a necessity, but it was something that you were delivering, and people were responding to that, and that just the journey, the evolution, just grew into the next phase of how you can tailor it to like the major websites. And that was like, hey, I originally sought out to create a business and not where I'm working in the on the business, I'm working in the business and never on the business and doing the strategy. So the reason why I brought that up though is just because when you're talking about that evolution, a lot of times people just starting out have that assumption, well, this was the first company, knocked it out the park, and it was a home run. What was that duration of time just for you as you were evolving and growing towards that more product focus?
So the part of it's very misleading. So this has taken place over the course of almost a decade now, right? So this is not something that is just, and I think that that gets overemphasized a lot of times, where partially, people will take outliers and say, look, this company grew from zero to, $100 million or $1 billion in just a short amount of time, a few years. That's either, an outlier, or the way that you hear the story is through a filter, just like I did, right? So without quantifying the time, without saying, oh, I did this and I did this and I did this. And if you're listening, you thought, man, this is just, this came from nothing. But actually it came from a lot of very boring, very hard, very unsuccessful, in many cases, months and weeks and years in building toward that. Early on, I think that it takes a long time. Like, you have to get out and you have to kind of work and try to provide value as much as you can to folks, but you have no idea what you're doing, and it takes time to learn that. So it's not something that kind of just happened, and there's a lot of like learning lessons throughout this whole time. It took me almost half of that time to even understand that I wanted to trend more toward a product and do that. So so it takes a lot of time, and it's not nearly as interesting or exciting when you're going through that time. It's very it's very long and arduous. But then when you look back on it, you said, oh, okay, yeah, here I am. This is good. I did learn some things. Like, we have put something together. This is kind of cool. But it is a process.
Yeah, I kind of can definitely relate in kind of having that epiphany where you're working on a business and you're starting to realize, okay, it's going to be almost impossible for me to, step away from this business and still be able to, have the business running and generate revenue. Because you literally kind of said you had people calling you on like a Sunday night for, whatever reason, versus, being able to, have a software or a product that, essentially kind of, runs on its own. Right. And, for me, that was really, that moment is what led me to really understand, okay, I need to get into technology and I need to work on a technology startup. Just because I kind of worked on a agency as well, but it was more on a kind of like digital media, versus marketing. But yeah, I can definitely relate to that. Yeah. And it seemed like you kind of worked on your agency a little bit longer. You had, very large clients. So I think, the money that was coming in kind of made it easier for you to be like, okay, I'm going to stick with this, until you had that moment.
Yeah. And you bring up a really good point. So the business models are very different. And I think this is a good thing for people to understand. So if you're doing consulting or a services type of business, typically the service that you're providing is an established service. Okay, so if you're doing marketing services, or you're doing legal services or accounting or anything like that, you're generally providing something that people know what it is. It's not some new invention or new product or anything, and they will pay you money for it, and there's a market for it. So really the only thing that you have to do is run into people who need that service and be trustworthy and kind and provide a good value, and they will pay you money right away. Okay. And this is how myself and a lot of my friends, and I've heard this story many, many times over, they get started by doing that. And it's a good way to get started because you get paid right away. The thing about a product, a software as a service, or any kind of other product, is that it takes a significant amount of time to get to the point where you can actually live off of the business. So it's an important thing to be realistic about, because so with our latest company, Tend, which is the analytics tool, we've been working on it for about 2 years now, and it is breaking even. We keep adding more cost to it, so it's breaking even. It's growing. It's doing very well. I'm very excited about it, and it's growing fast, and we're getting all the signals that it's a great product, but it's breaking even. Like right now. So and it's bootstrap. We're trying not to put, a lot of our own money into it. We're trying to make it, a little bit, but we're trying to, bootstrap it and grow it organically, but it takes time, and so it is, I think a lot of people have unrealistic expectations when it comes to a product, in that, number one, you need knowledge and context in order to create that product. You need to have some experience about a market or a particular pain that people have in order to create it. And two, you need time in order to develop that. Time and a skill set. And time means money. So you need some sort of other source of income. So a lot of times, like I've heard many, if you didn't go out and get venture capital or seed round, a lot of times that's funded by consulting or a services company, which is hard, but it's doable. So,
man, that's so true to early technology enthusiasts who, are seeing the headlines in TechCrunch and think like, oh, I got this idea, I just want to get funded, and I'm off to the races. But I want to talk about your actually inspiration for 10.io, because you were actually working on bite size. Well, you're still working in bite size PPR. So, like, was there a frustration that you were noticing within the company, within your clients there, and decided where I don't need to make this a product of bite size PR, but I need to make this a completely different product?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things. So I have a business partner on Tend, which I don't have in the other businesses, but and he also has he actually has another software product. His name is Marty. He's an awesome guy. He has another software product that he's had for the last 7 or 8 years, and it's doing well. It's stable. It's a good product. But we had kind of talked about things just periodically, and we sort of stumbled across this problem, which is pretty fundamental and pretty universal to folks, which is I am doing these various marketing things, and it is a ton of work to A, understand what it is to look for, and B, implement the things that I need to implement, software, and then setting up of that software in order to understand what is actually working. So in my marketing days, I sort of would talk to people and say, all right, hey, we're going to do these things. What's working for you and marketing wise? I'd be like, oh, okay, great. We have Google Analytics. I'm like, that's awesome. Okay, what's working? And they would say, I don't know. They say we're working on that. We do some Google AdWords and maybe we do some Facebook ads, but they almost never knew what was working. And I myself had the same experience, owning my product, which is I could see certain things, so I could see, metrics that came from the marketing, but it was very difficult to actually tie the final sort of outcome. So meaning, hey, we did a variety of marketing tactics. We got this person to the site, and then they became a customer, and then they stayed a customer for a year, and then, that was an awesome outcome. So it was a real big pain to tie all that together. And so I was just talking to my business partner about it kind of casually, and we started kicking around ideas and, just why that was and what could, maybe be done about it. And it sort of happened very spontaneously. So my business partner is more technical than I am. He's a developer. He started coding, and I just started talking to people about it. I said, hey, just my friends who are entrepreneurs, I'd say, hey, was this an issue for you? Does this make sense? Is this a problem? They're like, yeah, this is a problem. So, we started building it, showing it to people. And then not long after that, we started taking credit cards, and saying, hey, would you pay for this? People said, yeah, I'll pay for this. And those are mostly people that I knew. And then we kind of, grew from there. But the whole idea and the whole process came out of, once again, necessity, out of just having the problem myself and understanding that a lot of people had that problem.
You talked about securing paying customers, and I definitely want to get into that. You kind of talked about, obviously getting people that you knew to pay for it, but I know that you also have people that are paying for it that are outside of your immediate network. So I definitely want to get into that. But before we get into that, one of the things that is pretty interesting to me is, one, you had bite-sized PR already going. Now you're building out 10.io. What did you do with bite-sized PR just to make sure that, that was still going to be running? at 100%. I'm just assuming, but I'm guessing you kind of focused on, developing processes that would allow it to kind of, run without you, being on it 100% day to day.
That's a good, very, very good question. So part of that is that Bite Size PR was born in a time where it started as a side project, and it grew into something more than that. But it started as a bit of a side project because I had the agency, So basically, it's sort of, the agency is since gone, but because of that, it's always had that sort of mechanism in place that it doesn't need my 100% full attention. Now, there was a time where it was getting, a good degree of attention, but then as it grew and it was able to attract more resources to put toward it, and I'd hire people, put, marketing systems in place, support systems in place, all that kind of stuff, then it sort of, running on its own doesn't necessarily do it justice, but it has a lot of those things so that I can do other things. And that's sort of what has given me the ability to start Tend and focus on Tend and, spend time on it is just that just because it was always that way, since it started. Now I adjusted some time and shifted some things around, but, it was already there. And it's kind of one of those things where people have this idea that a lot of their businesses can't run without them, and it's true in the sense that if you're a freelancer or a consultant and you're actually providing the work, your business really can't run without you. Okay, but as you are not the product, as you are not actually selling your time, then it has the ability to run more, without you, sort of. But I don't want to give any kind of, the one thing that you have to be careful of is that people have this idea that businesses are passive and they're, you build them up and then boom, you just kick back and collect the money. It really is not the case. Like, you have to put, time and, mental energy and attention into things for them to A, maintain, and B, actually grow. So you have to be a little bit careful in that I'm not a big believer that there's a passive business that you can just build it, boom. Because what happens is, if you kind of let your foot off the gas, people come in, they compete with you, they do things better than you, trends change, all that kind of stuff. So you have to, you do have to be involved. But
Ryan, it's like you have insights into my notes because you're like you're like right on track of like what I want to follow up and ask you about, because that right there is just so important to hear. Because a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of innovators, a lot of people just like ourselves, we have a ton of ideas, and just knowing that you have to be strategic and taking that first step and knowing. Now, just, diversifying your risk and being able to juggle that and putting the systems in place and processes in place to make that happen. Because that's so important, because it goes into acquiring your first customer, like that actual first customer who's not someone that not your mom that told their friends to sign this up or anything to that nature, but that true customer that comes in and you really didn't know who they were, but they responded to your value proposition. What are some specifics into setting up your company and your messaging to be able to have that type of response? Like, what's that journey?
Yeah, so I have so at this point I kind of have a process, and it is very informal. The process goes something like this. Do I have this problem? Yes. Would I pay for it? Yes. Awesome. That's the first customer. I don't count that, but that's like a good question to ask yourself, which a lot of people seem to skip over. So then the second thing is I just start talking to people about it. I say, people, hey, what are you working on? What are you doing? I just talk about it. And if it's interesting, then I sell it to them. And I sell it to them in the sense of usually the product isn't fully developed, not in the sense of pay me money right now, but just I sell it to them of like, hey, I'm working on this thing. I think actually you get some value out of it if I truly think that. And then would you be interested in doing these things. So in the case of Tend, it's just installing a script on your site. So the thing is that it's really hard to get people's attention and just get people to care. And then it's also very hard to get people to take action, even your friends. So you probably have the same experience, like just getting your friend to do one simple basic thing, even though they're your friend and they want to help you out and whatever, they're busy, they have a lot of things going on. So if people aren't doing it right away, that's like not a good sign. If you talk to somebody and they said, yeah, that's awesome, and then after the meeting or after the lunch or whatever, they send you an email and say, hey, can I get that? That's a really good sign. Or,
True.
if you give them something to do and they do it right away, that's a good sign. Now, it's not by any means the end of your process at all, but it's a step in the right direction. Then, you can kind of see if people are using are they actually doing the thing? Are they actually using your product or service? Are they getting value out of it? And then the next thing is, saying you don't have to do this right away, but after you get it to a point, it's just saying like, awesome, this is great. Thanks for being a customer, or, thanks for using this. I'm going to start charging people for it now because you were early and you're awesome and you're my friend. You're going to get X whatever, discount, but here's the price. And you come at it with people should understand that's like the idea, as you go through it. And then they either pay you or they don't. And even if it's friends or even if it's people that if they're not getting value out of it, they won't pay you. And that's fine. You shouldn't expect them to. You should make it easy for them not to pay you. But people tend to not pay you for things if they don't get value out of them, even if they're your friend. So now that, again, you may have some really, tremendous friends or whatever, and they want to do you a solid. So then that's not going to, pay the bills anyway. So you have to go beyond that. And that's where you develop, saying, okay, these are the people who paid for it. How do I find more of these people? The way I do things, because I'm not, super smart, I just look for people who have the same problem that I did, and I usually know who they are, or I know where they're hanging out, or what they're like, or how they talk, or, all that kind of stuff. And I just figure out the easiest way to get those people. The easiest, cheapest, fastest way to get those people. And then you go do that and you pitch them. And the way I did it for Tend is, so, some of the effect is that you'll get is that when you create something really good, your friends will tell other people about it, and that you don't know. And then those people will come in and start using the product or whatever and start paying you for it. And then beyond that, you have to build marketing systems. But one of the things, the very first thing that we did was just cold email, and just emailing people, finding people that I knew were good customers, and pitching them through email, just saying, hey, I know who you are, I know what you're doing, or I give them some sort of signal that you are relevant to them. And then, give them a value proposition that says, hey, I think you should check this out. And again, it's just sort of going from there. If you do that and put a lot of good energy out of it and you don't get any response back, then you don't have something that's probably worth selling. If you do that and you get people here and there, it doesn't have to be a flood, but if you get people here and there to kind of, get on board, start paying for the product, using it, asking you questions, even challenging you, hey, how is this different than that, or whatever, that's all a good sign. And I really like cold email for that early phase to get through that process, because it doesn't cost anything and you get feedback right away that people are either interested or they hate you. And that's exactly where you want to be. Like, you want to hear that raw feedback of, hey, this is good, this is interesting, but it doesn't have this, or I hate you, I never want to hear from you again. Like, those things are both fine to hear. That's what you're going for, is quicker feedback.
You touched on a couple of things that I really want to dig into, and one of the things that I felt like I had to learn when I first decided to go into business for myself was kind of, it was a hard lesson, to be honest. It was a hard lesson because I had kind of launched this product, and my friends were like, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna get it," and then finally it came out and nobody bought anything, right?
Yep.
And
which is very
after
common. That's the outcome that most people will have, and that's okay. That's part of the process.
Yeah. So my question is, because it took, I would say, I think it definitely took a little maturing to not take it personal.
Yep.
And just understanding, okay, like even if my friends aren't buying into the product, it doesn't necessarily mean that this is a bad product. You maybe need to go out and actually find the people that want this product, right? Do you have any kind of tips or suggestions of how you kind of look at dealing with friends, and when you're working on a new idea and people aren't really responding how you would like them to? Or do you not even pay attention? You just kind of keep it moving?
No. I pay a lot of attention to that, because if they're not responding, it's a problem. And I've been fortunate enough that I have friends who will give me very honest feedback, and it's when you find those people, man, you hold on to them. They're very valuable. They'll say, "Hey, I don't care about this at all." And that's good to hear. So, but if people aren't taking action, it isn't personal. It shouldn't be personal. It's that they're not getting value out of that the thing that you're doing, and it could be that they're not the right people, right? So you just because they're your friends don't necessarily mean that they're your target market. For me, it's easier if they are my target market, because I have instant and infinite access to those folks, so I can talk to them and understand them in excruciating detail. And I think that's just an easier way to go about things. But if they're not, if you're marketing to someone who's completely outside of your comfort zone, you need to in those folks' hands as quickly as possible, as often as possible, and listen as much as possible to what they have to say. And usually, that's not that hard to do if you're willing to put yourself out there and take criticism and listen to people when they say things to you. A lot of founders, and I completely understand this, don't want to hear it because what they built is awesome. And if you don't agree, then you're just wrong. Some of that is good. Some of that attitude is healthy and, is useful in the times that you need to be resilient. But, a lot of that can, make you deaf to, what the market is telling you, and
hey, Ryan said it. I didn't.
Yeah. Yeah. So, that's the thing. Like, so when it comes down to it, this is the thing, friend or not, when it comes down to pay people money, it needs to have value. And you'll know if it's going to have value or not when people either pay you money or they don't. And, this is part of my frustration with the whole, TechCrunch sort of thing in raising money and, building a big consumer product. That is well and good. It has its place. It has a lot of value. The problem with it for founders is that you actually don't know if what you've built has value and it has enough value to support a business for many, many years, because you're subsidized by money, which is fine. But I read recently that TaskRabbit is looking to sell sort of at a fire sale now, which is they raised a bunch of money. And part of the issue, I'm guessing, is that their unit economics are messed up, meaning
scaling that.
Yeah, they can't acquire new customers and service them for something that it can produce a profitable business model. Well, it's taken, I don't know how many years it's been since they've raised all that money, but it's been multiple years, and they're just now figuring that out. I think it's, makes more sense to do that as you go, to say, oh yeah, hey, we got these people, they can pay us money. It actually works right now, and I can go I can be scrappy and figure out how to make that work now. And that's, again, I don't mean to disparage that whole thing, because it's Silicon Valley, and that whole, generates a lot of innovation and great companies, and that's great. But for the vast majority of founders, that's a scary route.
I want to say probably like a year ago, I had to implement Google Analytics software into some enterprise software, and boy, was that a task in itself to implement. And so when I just saw your promotional video on your website, and I was like, I wish I had saw this promotional video, a year ago, because that's always the question when you're doing marketing analytics like Google Analytics, or using products like yourselves, like 10.io. It's understanding that customer journey of that touch point of they were driven by opt-in of some sort, and what were the actions that encounter once they arrived on your domain, and really how did that lead into a transaction or returning? Are they having the similar patterns? What's the response from your current existing customers, and how is that lending itself into the future iterations with the product?
Yeah, so you're hitting on one of the biggest things about it. So in getting this set up for most people is getting it just set up is a pain in and of itself. Okay, so if you want to track conversions, even something just, hey, I want to track conversions. Okay, getting that piece set up for most business owners is exceedingly difficult. Now, if you're more tech savvy, if you're more in that space, if you're more tech oriented, maybe it's not quite as hard for you. But for most business owners, it's very hard, and it's very hard to actually understand. So that's kind of the biggest piece of it. The second thing, once you do get it installed, is that most people look at it and it's data overload. It's these abstract charts, these abstract trends, and there's hundreds of reports and charts and things you can look at. And for most people, it scares them. They don't understand it. It's confusing. And honestly, just the data that you see doesn't matter that much, So, for most small businesses, as much as you want to obsess about a bounce rate or average time on site or pages per session or whatever it is that people are looking at, it doesn't really impact them that much. Does it matter? Yeah, okay, maybe it matters, but it's not the most important thing. And so they are overloaded by this sort of thing. So the response from our customers has been phenomenal in that they are seeing things for the first time that they haven't seen before, which is basically, hey, I got this new customer and they spent $400 with us. Where did they come from? And we're showing them who the customer is, where they come from, not just the last click, not just the last website that they came from, but we're showing them, the 10 last websites that they came from and the specific ads. And we're showing them that, yes, this ad that you started, ran 6 months ago, and then led to them looking at your site, reading your blog posts, seeing another retargeting ad, coming back, then seeing you on Facebook, and then finally buying. Like, those things actually worked. Or that very first ad that you ran would have been lost in most of the other tools. That actually worked. And so when people see that, they're like, okay, now I can understand this. And it's much more approachable for people because we cut out all those reports. We cut out all the charts and the graphs and all that kind of stuff, and focus in on, look, these are the people, these are what they did, and this is how you got them. And so you can get very very clear information on whether or not that Facebook ad that you ran or the blog posts that you're writing are actually driving paying customers. And that's kind of been the thing for the product. And that's why, and we're really, like, honestly, I was talking to my business partner today. If we just continue to do that piece well, if we just continue to refine the product, we won't have to, it's that simple. Like, it's not, coming up with 100 new features and doing a bunch of different things. It's just clearly articulating very simple things to people, but those simple things actually impact their business and actually matter. And so if we can continue to that, everything else will, I don't want to say take care of itself, but it'll point us in the right direction.
Yeah, I mean, just kind of based off of, your answer, I totally agree that analytics is definitely important, and surfacing the right analytics is, I mean, can make or break a business, right? And if you have, non-data minded folks looking at Google Analytics, trying to understand it, trying to set up dashboards and, all these other things that, most, founders don't really necessarily have the bandwidth to do, especially if they're just starting off, being able to use something like 10 where you're able to just kind of, type in and get the data that you're looking for, utilizing, regular language.
Right.
I mean, it's invaluable.
Yeah, it's been a good thing. I mean, and it's simple doesn't necessarily mean easy. So hasn't been easy for us to create it and develop it. But
I'd imagine.
Yeah, but that's the thing that people crave. People don't, a lot of times, we set out to create these tech products and, we think about all the things that it can do, and, software is, you could build it infinitely. And what's more important is just, solving problems that people care about and doing that, keeping it very specific on solving those problems and not really worrying about the features. Like the features really just support how well you're solving the problem, how well you're articulating the opinion of, what they should be seeing and how they should be approaching things. And that's it. That's all the features are. If a feature doesn't, support that thing, you shouldn't build it. That's kind of how we've done it.
Nice. When you talk about, you have your product and you're kind of essentially scaling the actual, the marketing and the sales process. You said you reach out to potential customers via email, right? Mm-hmm. I'm kind of curious, like, how do you go about, for example, I mean, you kind of have, let's say you have a list of 10 different companies you want to reach out to. Yeah. How do you go about getting those contacts?
Yeah.
I feel like that's usually the hardest part.
Yeah. So just for a little bit. So with Bite-Size PR, we did not do this. And the reason is that with Bite-Size PR, we were able to get traffic around the specific problem, the specific industry at a cheap rate. With analytics software and things like that. So, with Bite-Size, we were doing Google AdWords with, something like 10. And Google AdWords is awesome. If you can get the right niche, the right keywords and that sort of thing, you can get that traffic pretty easily. When we started with 10, it's a little bit of a different thing. So in that people don't necessarily know that they need it. So when they see it and when they get it, it's awesome and it's cool and they love it. But if you have Google Analytics installed on your site and you are, it's fine, you guess. It's like you wish it was better. You want to see things, but you don't know that other things exist. There's a lot less search traffic for it. And the search traffic that it is out there, so if you're Googling analytics software, it's exorbitantly expensive. Like we would pay $30, $35 a click, for analytics software keywords. So number one, we had to just tell people that it existed that didn't know, so who weren't searching for it. And number two, just from a cost perspective, like that sort of thing wasn't an option, at least to get started. We wanted to, again, using the sort of the starting point of, we knew roughly who the people who were interested in our software were, okay? And they fit, so the way that we did it is they fit certain things. So number one is they were doing some sort of advertising, right? So they were advertising, they were smaller businesses and that sort of thing. So this is an important point. When you reach out to people, you want to, as finely as possible, define your market. What kind of company do they work at? Do they own the company? Do they work at the company? What kind of company is it? If they work at the company, what's their title? As many things as you can, put together. What do they do? What's their job? All that. So for us, for Tend, it was basically smaller business owners, and later we kind of sort of realized that it was also marketing managers and at mid-sized companies, but smaller founders who owned a business that was trying to drive leads and or trying to drive sales through their website. Okay, which is a pretty wide. That's a massive market, right? But they're doing advertising. They're trying to drive leads or customers to their site. So one of the things that we did, we used a tool called SEM Rush, in the beginning to just understand who, and what SEM Rush does is it shows you who is advertising, who is using Google AdWords. Okay. When I say who, I mean which websites. So it'll show you the domain of the websites. So what we did is we looked at, okay, these people, and it also shows you roughly how much money they're spending. So we say, okay, these folks are spending about X amount of dollars. They're paying for AdWords, which means that they're, serious enough to pay money, and they probably want to know if that money is being spent well or not. So what we would do is then track down the owner of that site and send them an email. Okay. Now, you mentioned, you gave the sort of just example of 10 people. If you send 10 people a cold email, like we do, you will get 0 responses on average.
I thought you were going to say at least one.
Well, I mean, maybe one. Maybe if you're smarter than I am. Okay, so maybe you get one. But like, this is where most people are like, hey, yeah, I sent 10 people an email and no one responded. Like, yeah, that sounds about right. So maybe you should send 10 more. And then if no one responds, maybe you should send another 10 more. So the key to it is finding enough people to respond to. And also, like, and it's not, it doesn't continue that way forever, but when you're first starting out, your pitch is terrible. Like, you have no idea how to do this. You don't even know, probably, like for us, exactly what the product is or exactly why people, want to use it. You don't know the words that's going to trigger them to open the email. You don't know the words that's going to trigger them to actually click on the link. You don't know the features. Like, you haven't built the features. Like, you don't know anything. So the first day is the worst day you're ever going to like do this thing. And if you want to send 10 emails, like, you're going to get 0 responses. So for us, like, it was just, all right, let's send a bunch of emails. And then we have, and so finding, just to answer your question a little more specifically, the way we did this was finding the owners of the websites was just going to the WhoIs data and finding the owner's name. Okay, so if you go to whois.net, you can see, once we knew the owner's name and we knew their domain, then there are tools that will, if you know the first name and the last name and the domain name, they'll guess the email and give you a valid email address back. Okay, and they do it in a programmatic way where you're not doing research manually necessarily, although that is an option for people. So we're doing it programmatically. So we're pulling down lists of things, lists of websites that are advertising. We're pulling down lists of owners of those websites, and then we're getting back valid email addresses. The other thing that I'll mention on this is that we are also sending specific emails to these people. So these people do not all get one email, right? So what we will do is we will send a cold email that'll say, hey, Jim, I noticed that you guys have run some AdWords ads in the past. Looks like you're active on Twitter. You've written a couple blog posts this month. The reason I'm emailing you is, like, we have this tool that will show you exactly which one of these tactics are driving real paying customers, not just page views or clicks, but actual paying customers. We have a free trial. If you want to take a look, here's a link, right? So the email basically goes something like that. And that email is different based on what people are doing. Now, as we've gone over time, that process has gotten more automated. It's gotten more specific. It's based on things that they're doing on their website, based on, a lot of things. So it's gotten, we're still actually doing it to this day because it's worked really well. But the way we started is just that basic research and sending that email. But for most people getting started, like, you need to at least send 100 emails. And it's okay in the beginning if those emails are even just one-off. Hey, I came across you on this. You got to have a good reason to reach out to them and qualify them. Say, the reason that I'm emailing you is that I identify that you might have this problem because whatever, and here's a solution that might be useful to you. No big deal if not, but I think it's useful to you. Most cold email is just like, hey, I built this. It's awesome. Check it out. No. Mm-hmm. Like, what you need to do is you need to reach out to people and tell them that you know who they are to some extent. It doesn't, again, a lot of this is automated for us now, but almost all of it. But it is, you need to prove that you've done your homework enough to have the opportunity to talk to them, which is and provide them a reasonable solution to what they're doing. If you do that, people are very, very responsive. And so you'll get at least interaction, at least no's, at least, I mean, even getting a no from people is okay because you can talk to them. They're saying, this, I don't like this, but here's why, or I don't like this. And then it gives you an opportunity to say, why don't you like it? They'll tell you usually. People are pretty good about that when new things come along, especially if you're genuinely trying to, solve their problem or help them out. Anyway, that's kind of how we've done it. Like I could talk for probably literally hours about how the whole process works, but
yeah, I mean, you really just kind of laid out a blueprint for people to be able to not only source leads, so SEM Rush, being able to actually gather information about potential customers, and then essentially refining it and organizing it based off of any set criteria, and then lastly, actually tweaking the correspondence directly to those customers. That's very valuable, I gotta say.
That's how you do it. The cold email, man, is good, but people think about it wrong. People think about it like, I need to just send, like you said, like 100 emails or 10 emails or whatever. No, you need to think about it like you're actually reaching out one-to-one, one email at a time. As you go, you'll figure out ways to make it faster, better, more efficient, so that you can actually send out 100 and have the same result.
So I think we can go into the gem round, and in the gem round, we like to ask just a couple questions, just to make sure that our audience is able to go away with some real tangible takeaways. But like I said, what you just laid out is so valuable. I mean, if people actually go ahead and actually follow those steps, then they should be set. You might want to kick it off.
That first question that we like to ask is, what top 3 tools will you have recommended to yourself when you first started working on the idea?
Well, I'll tell you, I'll answer this a little bit different. So one of the tools that I like for this is kind of like research and understanding what people are doing based on what what code they have on their site. So there's a site called Nerdy Data. It's NERDY, nerdydata.com. And what's cool about that is, like, you can put in a search query and you can look for any source code that's on their site. So if somebody is using a chat software, an analytics software, any kind of source code like that, you can just do a search and it'll return all the websites that are doing that search. So kind of, one of the things that we were talking about before is trying to figure out who your target market is. That's an awesome tool if the people you're trying to reach make themselves known on their site. Another thing that we use a lot that I love, it's a free, very simple tool, is Trello. It's how we organize all our projects. It's very simple to use. I love that Trello and Slack. And then I would say the other tool that I like that, when you're starting out, I think it starts at $50 a month, but as good as Intercom. Like, Intercom is a great resource just because you can do your support through there. You can trigger emails through there. You can, show people help videos, all that kind of stuff. And so that's another tool that I highly recommend.
Those are very dope tools, I gotta say. I'm familiar with a couple of them. I think I'm gonna definitely check out the last one that you mentioned. So the next question that we like to ask our guests in the gem round, Ryan, what do you do to keep yourself sane?
Yeah. So I have this I have this, like, it's kind of embarrassing for people that know me, but I don't really care. So I have this morning routine that I do, which is I've done it pretty much every morning. Well, I would say 6 days out of the week, every week for the last maybe 2 years or so. And I get up at 4:30 every morning, and yeah, it's an early day, but I get up, I do a little meditation, I do like a 10-minute meditation, a 10-minute yoga exercise. But it's nothing spiritual. It's nothing, it's just, I use Headspace, which is an app, and I just do this little 10-minute meditation. And what that does is it starts my day out. Usually I wake up and a lot of people, especially, you're hustling, you're a founder, you're working on something. Usually you wake up, or at least I did, and I had anxiety right out of the gate, which is just like, oh man, I got all this stuff to do. I'm really worried, whatever. And so I would, be stressed out. So I've done this meditation, and then after the meditation, I go to a coffee shop and I do an hour and a half of work, which is I try to work on the very most important thing, and that's it. So not checking email, not doing other stuff, but doing the meaningful work. Then when I do that, when I come home and I help get the kids ready to school, I get them off to school, take them to school and stuff. When I do that, I've already kind of organized my mind a little bit. I've done something important for the day. And so I can kind of relax and hang out with the kids and try to do that a little bit better. And then the whole rest of the day, work or otherwise, if it goes crazy, which it often does, it's okay because I've actually gotten something done. Right? It's not a huge time, but I've got an hour and a half of work done that's meaningful, that matters, that moves things forward. And that has had a profound change on my life in the last few years. Like I can't overstate how important it's been to just keep me, like, hey, just keep me, sane, not anxious, not fearful, not worried about stuff. Just doing that, knowing that I can, do that every day has been huge.
Yeah, I wake up at 5:30. I'm trying to get to the 4:30 like you.
Yeah.
But the next question.
You guys can keep the early morning stuff. I'm not a morning person at all.
I'm not either. The only reason I do it even is just because no one else is up.
Exactly. I tell Toya that.
But I do the meditation. I need to get better because I've been kind of falling off over the last couple of weeks. But I mean, the meditation is definitely helpful. I would recommend that to anybody who deals with just stress or anxiety, or just high pressure situations.
So the next question is probably in the same line a little bit. What is your favorite business book?
There's a book by the creator of Dilbert, Scott Adams, and he has some crazy thoughts, but his book is called something like How to Fail at Absolutely Everything and Still Win Big. And that's one of my favorite business books. It talks about a lot of different things, but one of the things that he kind of describes is that your brain is a moist computer, which is, he goes on to this big thing, but essentially kind of articulates that you can program your brain, right? That you don't have to, and it's in part kind of like that is actually the book that got me meditating and doing all that, which is you don't have to just be, dependent on your brain to just send you in whatever mood. Like, you can program it. There are ways that you can do, things that you can do to sort of direct your thoughts and hence your actions in a certain way. And so that was an awesome book. And it's also well written. It's kind of funny. It's insightful. He talks about goals versus thinking about systems versus goals. So I highly recommend that.
Awesome. I feel like I need to go and check that out because, I think it's kind of getting to mindfulness, right? And understanding that, you can, in a way, kind of control, your thoughts or even block out thoughts. And I think, the meditation is something that helps deal with that because it kind of forces you to focus, and essentially try and control, what's kind of coming in and out of your headspace. The last question that we like to ask, and this is one of my favorites, I gotta say, what is something that you do not want an app to replace?
Well, I mean, not to get too super, sentimental, but I'll give you two answers. One, I would the initial reaction is just love, right? Like, so I think, I don't think it's replaceable, but I sure hope people don't try to do it. But the sort of broader answer to that would be just the human experience. Just being, so many things can kind of, and I love all this stuff, but getting food delivered to you, getting your dry cleaning delivered to you, Amazon, Uber, all that kind of stuff is super convenient. But I hope we don't ever go so far as to replace the human experience where you never have to leave your house. You're always entertained. You're always satisfied. Or, you're,
Amazon can deliver it all to you.
yeah, exactly. So that's my hope, is that people don't take it too far and, get sucked into the, not just one app, but many apps.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one. I mean, the way the world's going, I could see that happening. But
Yeah.
but that need for just human, and I think, I don't want to get into it too much, but the whole, social media and social platforms kind of almost, in a sense, kind of replacing that human interaction. Not necessarily replacing it, but I feel like it's kind of subsidizing, that innate craving to interact with people. And it's kind of subsidizing it because you're able to do it from your home, but you're not really necessarily interacting with people. But yeah, that was a great one. I like that. That's something to think about for sure.
I think Ryan has gave us a lot to think about in this episode, and I really do want to thank you for just sharing some. You just made it real plain and simple. I'm going to listen back and take a lot of notes. I think I may say that every episode, but like I'm really serious about it for this one for sure. There's just a lot of insights to take away. So I definitely don't want to end without you having a way to, have people to connect with you and learn more about whether it's Bite Size PR or 1010.io.
Sure. Yeah. So, Bite Size PR, the URL there is just Bite Size PR, BITESIZEPR.com. Tend is tend.io. That's TEND.io. And I love mixing it up on Twitter. So my Twitter handle is just Ryan Evans. And so I'm happy to chat with anyone or, connect with anyone there.
As soon as you guys listen to this episode, go check out Ryan's websites and go check out the tools that were mentioned. And they're going to be displayed in the show notes because those are some really great things that will immediately impact your startup and your business. Thanks, Ryan.
Yeah, and this isn't a sponsor. This isn't a sponsored show by any means, but like if you have Google Analytics and then you look at 10.io, you'll understand like why you would need a switch.
Yeah, thank you.
Cool.
Great. Thanks again, Ryan, for joining us, and good luck with 10.io. And I think, to be honest with you, we're probably going to be reaching out as customers at some point, definitely with Bite Size PR. So be on the lookout for that email.
All right. Thanks a lot, guys. It's a lot of fun.
Thanks.
Bye, Ryan.